So last night for my birthday eve live, we actually were starting to read from the book Einstein's Cosmos, and we were rudely interrupted by my phone battery dying on us. And so tonight before bed, I thought I will read to you and at least finish the chapter I was reading and discussing, which was to do with classical mechanics. So here we are, we have gone live. We are here to hang out with you, with the kitty cats, and read from this book, Einstein Cosmos, that we started last night. So, especially if you were in the live last night, or if you're just looking at this video later on as a live replay, welcome back to our live. This is a little bit odd time for us because we usually go live on Saturday, Sunday afternoons, Boston time, but we are live right now. And it's been a little bit different couple of days because this week is my birthday. Today was actually my birthday. And hi, Baji. Here's Baji. He wants to have lap time. Come, Baji. It's okay. So here we are, Baji and me. And we are able to now go live after a bit of a busy day because we were taking lots of birthday wishes and birthday live stream, not live stream, birthday calls. My mind is on this live stream at this time. But those are the reasons why we were not able to go live sooner. So I am hoping that at least many of you can join during this live stream here today, and we can finish our chapter that we were reading earlier last night. Let me share the live. I don't know if our friends know that we have gone live, so we will share it. And welcome to you. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. We are just going to be chatting a little bit and then going live here very soon, okay? Or not live. We're going to start reading the book here very soon. We are already live. Hopefully you can see us. Hi, Ryder. Hi. Hello, how are you doing? What's that kitty doing? He is on my lap at this time. We're just getting ready to go, ready to tell all our friends about the live right here, right now, and tell everybody to please join. And we were reading this book, Einstein's Cosmos, last night, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue from last night. Big Chunga says, nice camera. Thank you. It's an old phone and we do our best, but thank you so much for joining. Clowning Around says, okay, nice. Mr. Oakley Bean, hello. Hi. This is Baji. Can I tell some jokes? Yeah, go for it, Mr. Oakley Bean. Certainly you can dominate the chat. We try to be very family friendly here. Lots of kids actually join this live with the kitty cats and the book reading. So as long as the jokes are family friendly, go ahead. And also I realize it's late here in the US, but it's early, in Asia and some of our other popular locations from where VIP guests sometimes join. So welcome if you're, joining from Asia, South Korea, India, Pakistan, Japan, maybe even North Korea. All are welcome. So be respectful, gentlemen, ladies. Thank you so much, Clowning Around. Thank you. What do you call a sad strawberry? A blueberry. I love it. Because of the blues, of course. Of course. Yes, I love it. Baji, what a nice joke by Mr. Oakley Bean. A blueberry. Oh, that is actually quite funny. Thank you so much for that joke. Thank you so much for joining once again. Fuji, no baby. Fuji. Karna Baba. Fuji is attacking his auto feeder over there. We will try to keep the peace around here. And Big Changa says, how are you? Thank you. We're good. We're good. Or maybe you're asking the others on the live. Yes, please do connect with each other. Sometimes, I say that people should feel free to dominate the chat because sometimes I'll be reading from the book. Oh my God, look, look. The boys hath got themselves into trouble. Now, mind you, they have been fed numerous snacks throughout the day, so don't think that they haven't been, but they love these treats. They love these treats, and Fuji has taken the lead to get into a lot of trouble today with this feeder, which is currently down because it is not working. Anyway, I have a good one. Why are piggy banks so wise? Because they have common sense. Yes! Oh, I love it. Gabrielle, hi. Hello, I'm from Poland. Very nice. I love it. Poland is a beautiful country. Thank you so much for joining from Poland. Do you like guitar? Of course. I love the strings. Pretty much all the string instruments. Love it all. I also really like certain oh my God, Fuji's licking my hand now. Who likes guitar? Yes. Oh, you play guitar. What time is it there? It is right now 12:46 in the morning in Boston. But sometimes I go live late because I know that sometimes that's helpful for people in Asia, but also helpful for people sometimes who go to bed late. I have another one. How do celebrities stay cool because they have many fans? Oh, Mr. Oakley Bean is very funny. Who likes guitar in the chat? Yes. Oh, I love this. You guys are so nice. This is a nice crowd. Gabriel from Poland, welcome to you again. Also for sharing where you're calling from. Sometimes people like to say where they're calling from, while others want to be more private. No, baby. Fuji, Karana. Fuji, no. Fuji, please, let's not hit this anymore. Oh, okay. Big Changa is saying bye. Well, we'll still be around. We will still be around, but if you have to go, then see you next time. Any does eyes in the chat? Same here, it's 12:46. Yep, in Massachusetts. What state are you in? Massachusetts. We're in the Boston area. We're just a little bit north of Boston. Okay, let me make sure that my oven is off. Indeed it is. 1, 2. Yes, off, 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 off. Because I was going to actually sit down and read from Einstein's Cosmos. The cats' names are Fuji, Suji, Baji. So yesterday I read up to this point. It was actually quite early in the book. But, oh, hi, Baji. Yes, Baji, you can join. So Baji likes to come and sit on the lap while I read for you guys from the book. We've been reading a lot of murder mysteries on this channel, but yesterday I started with Einstein's Cosmos, and in fact, a lot of people enjoyed that and they wanted to discuss physics at the live. So I was encouraged and thought that this might be a good opportunity to discuss these topics and read about these topics and you know, have a little bit of a discussion, even if it's something we understand well, but still kind of going through the history of how Einstein got to working on special relativity and then general theory of relativity, and then lastly he wanted to bring everything together with a grand unified theory. So, but kind of getting to that point of how the history of the science worked out, that's what we've been kind of discussing. Gabrielle says bye bye. Okay, Gabrielle, see you next time. Poppy says I subscribe to you. Thank you so much. I'm in the microwave right now. Puff the pine cone, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the live. So don't mind the noise that Fuji has decided to make. Hopefully he'll stop very soon here. I tried to make that go away, the auto feeder interruptions, but let's just see. Okay, so what we were talking about, as you know, right when the... Give me 1 second. Fuji! Fuji! No, baby. Fuji! Fuji! Do you want to come play here? Fuji! You can be a better boy than that. Let's... Do you want to come to lap here? Sit with mama? Poppy says, I love your cat. He or she is so beautiful. Yes, this is Baji. This is Baji. He's very cuddly. He's a very loving kitty cat. Indeed, he is... He's making biscuits at this time. But yeah, this is Baji. This is Baji. He's a boy. So, going back to Jesus loves you so much and your cat. Thank you so much, Student Life. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Poppy, thank you. Yeah, so I started going live more regularly, more recently, and we've met a lot of really good people on the chat. So once more, thank you so much for being here, and feel free to dominate the chat, and I'll still read all your comments in between all the book reading that I'm doing. The book is to give you some added value during the live stream, and also sometimes it leads to really nice discussions. And right now the topic is physics, but we also read about all kinds of topics, and sometimes we chat about all different world topics as well. So, Baji, do you want to come a little bit to the center? 1 second. Let me pull this a bit closer so we can put our feet on top. Do you like horses? I do horse shows. Oh my gosh. Well, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, why not? Horses are majestic. I don't know too much about horses, but I'd love to hear more about it. Anyone, feel free to chime in to the chat here. As I continue to read, I'll take breaks and still look at all your chat messages. If you want to tell us about horses, Puppy, go ahead and tell us, and we will be happy to ask you some questions maybe and learn more about the topic. I think I follow at least one person on TikTok who does horse stuff. It's a girl who works, I think she bought a farm and she has several horses that she takes care of, and it sounds like... Yes, yes, Fuji. It sounds like a ton of work. I think her username might be Broke Ass Horse Girl. Does that ring a bell? She's pretty famous. I think she moved from like California to Texas recently. But feel free to correct me. Super Wing, hi. Yes, so we're going to continue Einstein's Cosmos real quick here. And then I'll get back to the chat messages in just a second. Fuji Baba. Come, Fuji, do you want to come sit with us? Fuji, come sit with us. Come, Fuji. Come, beta. Here, look. There's a nice blanket over here. There is a nice blanket that you can sit on. How much phone battery this time? There is a ton. I charged it. It's at 84%. But we'll also continue this book. So don't worry about being left hanging. Sorry about that, Super Wing. Because we will continue the book and cover all the topics of interest. Okay? So when we were interrupted last night, we were talking about James Clerk Maxwell, a Scottish physicist at Cambridge University working in the 1860s. So we know that Isaac Newton was from the 1600s. He developed the laws of classical mechanics that was basically explaining everything that people understood for 2 centuries. And even now, those equations are used by NASA when they, send satellites out beyond Uranus and such, maybe even beyond that at this point. Michio Kaku, the author of this book, wrote this a while ago. So there's even more progress since this book. But basically, the point was that Newton did a ton of work that was basically what was known for 2 centuries. And then the next really big breakthrough in physics came from James Clerk Maxwell. So we will hear about that real quick. So Scottish physicist at Cambridge University, worked in the 1860s, developed a theory of light, not based on Newtonian forces, but on a concept called fields. Einstein wrote that the field concept is the most profound and the most fruitful that physics has experienced since Newton. These fields can be visualized by sprinkling iron filings over a sheet of paper. Place a magnet beneath the sheet of paper and the filings will magically rearrange themselves into a spider web-like pattern, with lines spreading from the North Pole to the South Pole. Surrounding any magnet, therefore, is a magnetic field, an invisible array of lines of force penetrating all of space. Electricity creates fields as well. At science fairs, children laugh when their hairs stand on end as they touch a source of static electricity. The hairs trace out the invisible electric field lines emanating from the source. These fields, however, are quite different from the forces introduced by Newton. Forces, said Newton, act instantly over all space, so that a disturbance in one part of the universe would be felt instantly throughout all the universe. Maxwell's brilliant observation was that magnetic and electric effects do not travel instantaneously like Newtonian forces, but take time and move at a definite velocity. His biographer Martin Goldman writes, the idea of the time of magnetic action seems to have struck Maxwell like a bolt out of the blue. Maxwell showed, for example, that if one shook a magnet, it would take time for nearby iron filings to move. Imagine a spider web vibrating in the wind. A disturbance like the wind on one part of the web causes a ripple that spreads throughout the entire web. Fields and spider webs, unlike forces, allow for vibrations that travel at a definite speed. Maxwell then set out to calculate the speed of these magnetic and electric fields. In one of the greatest breakthroughs of the 19th century, he used this idea to solve the mystery of light. So this is the biggest breakthrough after Newton's classical mechanics work. Basically, what Newton did with classical mechanics, all that business about forces being instantaneous and not taking time, that stuff is fine to assume when you're in a classical mechanics world. And if you're solving problems that can be solved well with classical mechanics type of approach. And that worked very well for 2 centuries, and even now they work. So it is not to say that it cannot work. It just means that you're solving a more classical mechanics type of problem. But Maxwell brought into all this the concepts of electric and magnetic fields, which will also give us, as we will find out, the concept of light and the explanation for light, and that these fields actually do take time. It may seem instantaneous because, especially if things happen fast, but it's not actually instantaneous. There is a time. And his formalization of the electric and magnetic fields and the equations that he developed, called Maxwell's equations, actually was the foundation on which Einstein was able to stand up his special theory of relativity. So it's very important to understand that he basically took Maxwell's work and started there. And without that, it would be very difficult. So this is the foundational work. Maxwell knew from the earlier work of Michael Faraday. So I was mentioning Faraday is another really awesome scientist. I personally really love him. He's an experimental physicist. And he, as we will find out, he actually did a lot of really great work too. All these scientists, build on each other's work. This is something to be understood as well. And when someone shows something experimentally, there is so much to learn from that, and a lot of people can benefit from those experimental observations, because even if the experimentalist doesn't know exactly what they observed, what the meaning might be, when you put everything together, you can actually come up with the more complete theory. So anyway, Maxwell knew from the earlier work of Michael Faraday and others that a moving magnetic field can create an electric field and vice versa. So moving magnetic fields can create electric field, moving electric fields can create magnetic field. This is something that actually Faraday observed in the lab by doing experimental physics, which is so important. The generators and motors that electrify our world are direct consequences of this dialectic. This principle is used to light up our homes. For example, in a dam, falling water spins a wheel, which in turn spins a magnet. The moving magnetic field pushes the electrons in a wire, which then travel in a high voltage wire to the wall sockets in our living rooms. Similarly, in an electric vacuum cleaner, the electricity flowing from our wall sockets creates a magnetic field that forces the blades of the motor to spin. So how cool is that, right? How freaking cool is that? So this observation that moving magnetic fields can create an electric field, moving electric field can create magnetic field. This had such huge applications that even before, because you don't have to completely formalize a concept to use it. So these people were using this concept, as we just described, for electricity in the house, or to, push water into creating electricity from hydroelectricity. All of this was a great application even before the concepts were formalized to later on give us special relativity. But this is what special relativity comes from, The genius of Maxwell was to put the two effects together. If a changing magnetic field can create an electric field and vice versa, then perhaps both of them can form a cyclical motion with electric fields and magnetic fields continually feeding off each other and turning into each other. Maxwell quickly realized that this cyclical pattern would create a moving train of electric and magnetic fields all vibrating in unison, each turning into the other in a never-ending wave. Then he calculated the speed of this wave. Like once you know it's moving and vibrating in unison, if you have a wave, maybe you can calculate the speed of that wave. And guess what? That's how we will get the speed of light. To his astonishment, he found that it was the speed of light. So remember, at this point, because actually, by the way, guess who also worked on optics and light? Newton, 200 years ago at this point. So it's not like we didn't know about light. We did know some things about light. It's just that we hadn't put together that light is made of both electric and magnetic fields. And if you somehow were to be able to measure the speed of this moving electric and magnetic field, you might be able to get the speed of light. They just didn't know that. So to his astonishment, he found that it was the speed of light. Further, in perhaps the most revolutionary statement of the 19th century, he claimed that this was light. Maxwell then announced prophetically to his colleagues, "We can scarcely avoid the conclusion that light consists of the transverse undulations of the same medium, which is the cause of electric and magnetic phenomenon." After puzzling over the nature of light for millennia, because we, of course, knew light. We looked at the night sky and saw light. That's how we knew about the stars, the sun, the moon, or the planets. Basically, we used light, traditional optics, to know that there were light sources in the sky. We knew light about for millennia, but we just didn't know about this electric and magnetic field nature of light. So we can scarcely avoid the conclusion that light consists of the transverse undulations of the same medium, which is the cause of electric and magnetic phenomenon. After puzzling over the nature of light for millennia, scientists finally understood its deepest secrets. Unlike Newton's forces, which were instantaneous, these fields traveled at a definite speed, the speed of light. Maxwell's work was codified in 8 difficult partial differential equations. So this is what I mean, Maxwell's equations. We all have to learn this in our E&M class. So, in both undergraduate physics for physics majors, as well as graduate physics for physics PhD students, you have to take a year of E&M, what we call E&M, electricity and magnetism class. It's a 2-parter. In undergrad, it's for a year, and in graduate school, it's for a year. And they always, basically the main content of this class, which takes a year, is to study Maxwell's equations, these differential equations that we just spoke about, and to understand them and to apply them and to, apply them to solve physics problems and to really, really understand that, right? But my theory, my sort of suggestion to academia is that at least in grad school, maybe they should start with the formalism of special relativity. We'll get into that in this book, so don't worry if you're not familiar yet. But if you start with special relativity, it might actually make that formalization a little bit easier to follow, because at this point, you know that electric and magnetic fields are, can be understood better with special relativity, which we'll get to. Anyway, I'm getting ahead. So, every electrical engineering, the sentence I just read, known as Maxwell's equations, which every electrical engineer and physicist has had to memorize for the past century and a half. So yeah, ever since Maxwell came up with Maxwell's equations, which was in the 1860s, so like all of the 1900s and all of the right now century, we have had to learn Maxwell's equations, whether if you're in EE or in physics. Today, one can buy a t-shirt containing all 8 equations in their full glory. The t-shirt prefaces... Give me 1 second. My phone screen is just like completely dimmed out. I can't see your... I want to join the CS department. Computer science, good for you, man. Software engineering jobs are in abundance, I hear. Today, one can buy a t-shirt containing all 8 equations in their full glory. The t-shirt prefaces the equations by stating, "In the beginning, God said," and ends by saying, and then there was light. By the end of the 19th century, so isn't this so amazing though? We knew about light. Traditionally, we knew about light. We knew about optics. Like, come on, right? Like, we knew about like certain properties of light and such. But Maxwell's equations is what formalized light for us in the 1860s. But for all those centuries prior, we didn't have those equations that actually formalize what light is. By the end of the 19th century, so great were the experimental successes of Newton and Maxwell that some physicists confidently predicted confidently predicted that these two great pillars of science had answered all the basic questions of the universe when Max Planck, founder of the quantum theory, so not yet, right? If you think quantum, if you thought everything was done, here's Max Planck, asked his advisor about becoming a physicist. He was told to switch fields because physics was basically finished. Isn't that so funny? So poor Max Planck, he asked about becoming a physicist, and people told him physics is done, and then he founded quantum theory. I love this. There was nothing really new to be discovered, he was told. These thoughts were echoed by the great 19th century physicist Lord Kelvin, who proclaimed that physics was essentially complete except for a few minor clouds on the horizon that could not be explained. Of course, Lord Kelvin is who we named the temperature scale after, Kelvin. This is so funny. I forgot about this part. Oh, poor Max Planck. This is so funny. But the deficiencies of the Newtonian world were becoming more and more glaring each year. So, they thought that they were kind of done with physics, but there were deficiencies in Newtonian mechanics. Discoveries like Marie Curie's isolation of radium and radioactivity were rocking the world of science and catching the public imagination. So this is what's so nice about diversity and different people doing different types of work in the sciences. What one person can discover can kind of go against what someone else said. And if it goes against something that was said for 200 years, especially by a very renowned physicist, it can be difficult to accept, but the truth is the truth. So Marie Curie discovered, of course, radioactivity. Even a few ounces of this rare luminous substance could somehow light up a darkened room. She also showed that seemingly unlimited quantities of energy could come from an unknown source deep inside the atom, in defiance of the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. These small clouds, however, clouds as in quotations, however, would soon spawn the great twin revolutions of the 20th century, relativity and the quantum theory. Yippee! 20th century is really marked by relativity and quantum theory. Relativity, as I was saying, special relativity especially comes from basically starting with Maxwell's equations. That's why it's so important to understand Maxwell's equations. But the other really cool thing from the 20th century is, of course, quantum theory and all that stuff about radioactivity, of course, all those discoveries, by Marie Curie, of course, fuels that. So all these, what I love is the experimental physicists like Marie Curie, like Faraday, their observations, I'm a fan. Honestly, if you ask me, my favorites are these people who did the experiments in the lab. It's not so much about understanding everything you're seeing, but it is about observing and reporting what you see. And then there's going to be other people who put it all together. So it's fine. And experiments lead the way for things like that. Hi, BJ. Hi. Thank you for joining. Welcome, welcome. We're reading Einstein's Cosmos and discussing physics and the history of physics with relative to special relativity. What seemed most embarrassing was that any attempt to merge Newtonian mechanics with Maxwell's theory failed. Maxwell's theory. So this is very important. Newtonian mechanics, very, very, very important thing from the 1600s that basically described, what we understood for 2 centuries. Maxwell's equations is basically the next biggest scientific formalization and big thing, They're both important things. So when they don't agree, that's a big problem. So most embarrassing was that any attempt. Hi, Dino. How are you, Dino? Any attempt to merge Newtonian mechanics with Maxwell's theory failed. Maxwell's theory confirmed the fact that light was a wave, But this left open the question, what is waving? Scientists knew that light can travel in a vacuum, in fact, traveling millions of light years from distant stars through the vacuum of outer space. But since a vacuum, by definition, is nothing, this left the paradox that nothing was waving. So, this is what I was talking about earlier, is that, Poppy, hi. Okay, bye. See you next time, Poppy. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining. See you next time, next live, okay? Tomorrow. So, the really path-breaking thing about Maxwell's equations is that it's saying something about light. But the thing is, we kind of had experience observationally with light and what light means to us because, I mean, the stars emanate light. We can see the stars because of light. We can see the planets because of light. We can see the sun because of light. So we kind of knew light, but we kind of didn't know light. You know what I mean? And that's what was hard to resolve by these people because I mean, even Newton, he did significant work on optics. It's in the Principia. So we kind of knew light, but we kind of also was learning something new about light in Maxwell's equations. And then, of course, we learned it in a much more simplified, more elegant way with special theory of relativity, as we'll find out. So that's where this was difficult at that time, because again, this whole thing about Maxwell is saying that light is, oscillating electric and magnetic fields, but we also know that light is the thing that that's the star. We see light coming from distant stars, and they've traveled through vacuum. So what was oscillating in vacuum, like, we think that's just nothing in space. So like, how was that possible? It just left people confused about what they kind of knew experimentally about light. Because when we see something because of light, that's us doing an observation of light. But then there's also this formalization of light that Maxwell did with his electric and magnetic field work, and people were having confusion to resolve the two. Newtonian physicists tried to answer this question by postulating that light consisted of waves vibrating. So we're talking about this book, Einstein's Cosmos by Michio Kaku. And in general, we're talking about how we got to special theory of relativity by Einstein. Newtonian physicists tried to answer this question by postulating that light consisted of waves vibrating in an invisible ether, a stationary gas that filled up the universe. The ether was supposed to be the absolute reference frame upon which one could measure all velocities. A skeptic might, since the Earth moved around the sun and the sun moved around the galaxy, then it was impossible to tell which was really moving. Newtonian physicists answered this by stating that the solar system was moving with respect to the stationary ether, so one could determine which was really moving. However, the ether began to assume more and more magical and bizarre properties. For example, physicists knew that waves travel faster in a denser medium. Thus, sound vibrations can travel faster in water than in air. However, since light traveled at a fantastic velocity, a larger velocity, 186,000 miles per second, it meant that the ether must be incredibly dense to transmit light. But how could this be, since the ether was also supposed to be lighter than air? With time, the ether became almost a mystical substance. It was absolutely stationary, weightless, invisible, with zero viscosity, yet stronger than steel and undetectable by any instrument. So this is what... Is that Baji? Baji, are you listening? Yes, this is Baji. This is Baji. He's listening to the physics. So this is what was so hard, because they had some knowledge of light already. In fact, for millennia, we had an experience of light. But now we're saying that light is made up of these fields, and those fields oscillate, and that's how they come to us. But what is oscillating and what is waving in space? That was the difficulty, because so then people made up this concept of ether in vacuum, saying that actually vacuum or nothing wasn't nothing, it was something. Maybe it was ether. And actually they overcomplicated matters. So this is kind of how science works, where sometimes because you know something and now you've learned something new, the in between of connecting the two can be very difficult, and you might even make a mistake in the process of, you know, of trying to understand the two things that are not making sense at the time. By 1900, the deficiency of Newtonian mechanics were becoming harder and harder to understand. The world was now ready for a revolution, but who would lead it? So basically, I'm sure at that time, before Einstein, the people, they knew about Newtonian mechanics and they knew about Maxwell's work. So they're coming up with all these like theories to explain about the light traveling from the stars towards us. Is it ether? Is ether sort of dense? Is it not dense? Because remember, they also knew about sound. They know about the speed of waves. They have a concept of sound at this time. They know they can measure it. They know how fast it moves. And they also understand how fast light moves. That light moves, you know, a lot faster. And they basically have an understanding of waves. So wave optics, even Newton did work on that. That's pretty old. They understood about waves. They just need a medium, just like sound needs a medium to travel. They thought, well, light should need a medium, some kind of material to travel, because they're still grasping at the concept of the oscillating electric and magnetic fields and what that really means. You know, can it really go through nothing or not? What does nothing even mean? Is the cat speaking? Yes. Yes, it's Baji that is narrating. So that's, you know what I mean? It's actually kind of difficult. Sometimes knowing something can be difficult because you might have to unlearn part of what you know in order to accept a bigger truth, which is, you know, in this case about light. But they had to really think about what they already know and maybe unlearn some of it in order to understand the bigger truth about light. That the bigger truth about light, which is really postulated by special theory of relativity, came out really in the 20th century, right? Because of Einstein. Because James Maxwell, he laid the foundation, but it opened up all these questions of about the nature of light, about the speed of light, and about the what it really means for light to be, you know, traveling through space and things like that, which was not being able to be answered, especially because of the absolute frame of reference, the absoluteness that Newtonian mechanics was assuming. Basically, Newtonian mechanics is fine, it works. There were just a few things that had to be updated in the sort of understanding and integration of the lessons. Basically, Einstein is a great integrator of both Newtonian mechanics and Maxwell's equations. He integrated Maxwell's equations in a new realm, special theory of relativity, we'll see here soon, which allows for relativity, you know, that you need this relative concept. You can't actually have absoluteness. You need this relativity in order for this to work. You're giving me existential crisis vibes. Hi, BJ. Hi, Success Zone. Hi, Reese. Reese, you're back. Yay. Half hawk, half man. Hello. So this is super fun. Now we will see sort of an integration of how we go from Maxwell's equations to the more new understanding of light, which is what Einstein gave us. But we will see how he kind of got there with this story. When Einstein, with nothing to lose, was able to strike at the heart of the problem, that Newton's forces and Maxwell's fields were incompatible. So this is something that they kind of knew already, but probably nobody was brave enough to really contradict Newton's forces and Maxwell's fields not being compatible. You know what I mean? Sometimes it takes actually some courage from a new physicist or researcher to really kind of say, like, these two things are not compatible. We're missing something and we need to do work We're missing something and we need to do work on that. Oh, thank you. Don't forget to drink water. Thank you. All right, so one of the two pillars of science must fall. When one of these pillars finally fell, it would overturn more than 200 years of physics and would revolutionize the way we view the universe and reality itself. Newtonian physics would be toppled by Einstein with a picture that even a child could understand. So this was the challenge. Now we finished chapter 1, we'll start chapter 2 here, but I just want to mention that this is not easy. It's not easy to topple 200 years of physics or understanding of how the world works or how everything in nature works. Everybody understood and had accepted Newtonian mechanics, and then came Maxwell's equations and Maxwell's theory, and he said something about electric and magnetic fields making up light, and that contradicted some other things we knew about light, such as what about the light coming to us from stars? How does that work? What about vacuum and the absoluteness of it and ether? You know, it brought up these other misunderstandings of the nature of things because we knew other things too about light. And then to come up with a simple theory that explains all of these contradictions and gives a new meaning and new discovery, basically, about light. That's really something, and that's exactly what special theory of relativity did. So that's the importance of Einstein's early work. He first worked on special theory of relativity, and then later he worked on general theory of relativity. And general theory of relativity, or GR, is the more complete theory for gravitation, whereas special theory of relativity gives us the more complete view of electric and magnetic fields and light. Are you PhD in modern physics? I have a PhD in physics with a subtopic of particle astrophysics, actually, but sure. Modern physics is considered to be 20th century physics. So, yeah, I would say I have a PhD sort of in modern physics. I mean, I have a PhD in physics, but, everybody has to focus on something, and I focused on particle astro, and that's kind of like a cross-section of both particle physics and astronomy or astrophysics. Well, really three things: astronomy, astrophysics, and particle physics. I find it very interesting. Thank you, Reese. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. This is a very exciting topic. I think that sometimes it's good, I've read the book already when I was a kid, but it's nice to revisit how science is done because, science is difficult, obviously very impactful, but sometimes it's good to think about, okay, this led to this, and these were the sort of mistakes in between. And you know what I mean? That is hopefully encouraging our present generation to think about things in that way too, and where they could come up with something. They could really take something and connect the dots to maybe hopefully something new, and they could solve something. And sometimes things that are so like established and well understood, it can actually be the problem in the sense that if you come up with something that topples something that's well understood or well known or well recognized, that could be a challenge. But then sometimes that's what's needed. I'm just an electrical engineer, but I like to learn about these things. Oh, good. Well, there's no just in double E. Double E is hard. I like astrophysics. Yay! Yes, I love astrophysics. I'll talk more about my research at some point at one of these lives. BJ, good night. See you next time. Sorry we're a little late today. Astrophysics. I can talk about my research at some point. It's, it's very focused in its own way. But double E, I mean, in my jobs, I probably use more doubly than any of this, but I love all of this. So I thought I'll share with you. Kayla. Kayla, hi. Hello again, Kayla from the UK. It's a school day and I'm in bed because I'm too tired. Oh, good. So are you skipping school? You should, this right here is kind of like school. We could talk about Einstein's cosmos as a school alternative. UK here too. Oh, Reese, you're from UK? Kayla is from UK and she's in bed. Yes, Einstein's cosmos. Yeah, electricity and magnetism has always fascinated me. Oh, good. Well, they're very relevant topics. Sometimes I do laugh a little bit about how, Einstein gave such an elegant theory that completes electricity and magnetism. But also, we generally, when we do E&M, we actually use Maxwell's equations. Most physicists, even, or engineers, don't really use special relativity because of the environment where special relativity would be more relevant. It is more extreme. Most people end up just using Maxwell's equations and they don't actually see the elegance or use the elegance of special relativity. But it's so interesting to learn about special relativity, and it really makes, once you kind of appreciate the beauty and the connection of it all, it it makes for the better sort of theory it gives you the more comprehensive theory to understand those topics of E&M. Can you talk about something normal? Yeah, we do talk about normal things on some of these live streams. So I actually just finished reading a murder mystery book the other day, and then this week is my birthday, and because I'm a physicist, I'm taking the opportunity to talk about physics. Hello, Kayla. I'm in North Yorkshire. So I do talk about normal things as well. On many of my live streams, actually. And now we will talk about normal things for Einstein, actually. We will learn about his life. Because Einstein was very normal. Is it true that special relativity doesn't work when applied to the study? So when it comes to black holes and understanding gravitation, you actually need general relativity. So it's the more complete theory for gravitation. Special relativity in itself is a more of a theory for electric and magnetic fields and light. It doesn't actually tell you too much about mass. You know what I mean? So when you want to also understand about mass and gravitation, Newtonian mechanics gave us a theory of gravitation. That's how we know about gravity, right? Newton. But there is a more correct theory of gravitation, that is general theory of relativity, which Einstein developed after special theory of relativity. So as you can see from the chronology of how that happened, of course, he developed special theory of relativity first, then GR. So GR is the more complete. You need GR basically to understand more things about black holes and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say that special theory is not correct. It's just not concerning gravitation. Success Zone says I'm in US. Same. I'm also in the US. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. Star Gazray. Hi. From Scotland. I love Scotland. Last year birthday, I was in Scotland. This year I don't have the money. Talk about things which can be comprehended by my Aw. Oh, you meant general. Yes, Kayla, you can close your eyes and still hear us about Einstein's cosmos. You can be on the live stream with your eyes closed and just listen for meditation purpose, or as a peaceful, relaxing live. My birthday will be on the 26th, so my birthday month also. Ah, So GR, you asked about GR. So let me see the question again. GR has done pretty well, actually, as far as, you know, so amazing thing about GR is that we were able to confirm it with the laser interferometry experiments. So, gravitational waves, which is given to us by general relativity GR, was not really confirmed or seen experimentally until very recently, until when I was in grad school, actually. So in the last decade, which is very exciting, very interesting indeed. In the last decade, I don't even want to say decade. It's in the last, what year is it? 2024. It might have been 2015 or 16 is when we first saw the evidence of gravitational waves with experimental physics. And so GR actually has been proven correct in that context. It's like a podcast. I've only ever been to Jedburgh on the Scottish borders. It's lovely up there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was in Edinburgh. Oh, loved it. And I did a tour that covered like the Scottish Highlands and everything. So it was amazing. Stargaze Ray, happy birthday. Happy early birthday. I'm going to sleep on the live for 2 minutes. Success Zone. Success Zone, I'm sure that what we're about to talk about now, is going to be very comprehensible. It'll be just like a story. What are gravitational waves in layman's terms? So gravitational waves is basically the interaction between two masses. It's the waves that carry the force, but we will formalize it better with general theory of relativity. But it's what makes masses get attracted to each other, but really it's a more complete theory than what Newton gave to us with his Newtonian mechanics explanation of gravity. What are gravitational waves in layman's terms? When we get to the part about GR, we will cover this in much more detail. So I don't want to say too much about gravitational waves without the problem with GR is that you first need to establish some notation and some other terms for which you really need to cover special relativity. That's why we're going to first work up to special theory of relativity in these episodes, and then we'll talk about general theory of relativity, because it's much harder. Not much harder. It's the more complete theory, and it is harder. It is harder. So let's talk about gravitational waves then, after we have talked about special theory of relativity. So, but before that, we will cover chapter 2, Einstein's Cosmos. The man who would forever reshape our conception of the universe was born on March 14th, 1879, in the small city of Ulm, Germany. Hermann and Pauline Koch Einstein were distressed that their son's head was mishapen and prayed that he was not mentally damaged. I have 3 kitty cats, thanks to God. Einstein's parents were middle-class, secularized Jews struggling to provide for their growing family. Terms like wave and field kind of put me off. A wave is what something does. It isn't a thing. I see what you're saying. Yeah, we will try to say it in different ways so that it might make more sense. A wave is not a thing. I got you. It's an interaction. You're right. You're right. It's the bending of space-time is basically for general relativity, when Einstein basically said, like, the Earth moving around the sun or black holes. They bend space-time, and the more massive something is, the more ability it has to bend space-time. And the carriers of that is gravitational waves. So, but yes, we will definitely try to explain it in more diverse ways, which might be making it more understandable by a wider audience. So we'll read a little bit about Einstein's background now. So his mother, Pauline, was the cultured one in the Einstein family, insisting that her children take up music and starting young Albert on his lifelong love affair with the violin. Hermann Einstein, in contrast to his father-in-law, had a lackluster business career, originally starting in the feather bed business. His brother Jacob convinced him to switch to the new electrochemical industry, the inventions of Faraday, Maxwell, and Thomas Edison, all of which harnessed the power of electricity, were now lighting up cities around the world, and Herman saw a future building dynamos and electric lighting. So this is another reminder that all these people, Faraday, Maxwell, Thomas Edison, indeed having electricity and magnetism at that time was already a thing. It was they were using electricity and magnetism. So this is another thing too that I wanted to note, is that sometimes when a concept already exists, it's already in use as an application, like electricity and magnetism was in the time when Einstein was growing up, it's almost taken for granted. You know what I mean? It's taken for granted how it works or what it is, even if you don't fully understand it. So there might be things even now that we sort of take for granted and we don't really fully understand, but when you delve deeper, you understand that maybe we don't fully get it. And the contradictions that were brought about by James Maxwell's work with Newtonian mechanics, they were probably existing, but a lot of people probably didn't really care about that because they were already using electricity and magnetism. So who cares if they really understand it or not? So this too was fascinating in the sense that Einstein worked on something that already kind of existed, but they just contradicted and they weren't fully understood, and he wanted to fully understand it. So anyway, the young Einstein was late in learning how to speak. So late thank you, Superwing, that his parents feared that he might be retarded. Okay, sorry about that word. When Michio Kaku was writing this book, apparently this was still okay to use. But when he finally did speak, he did so in complete sentences. Still, even as a 9-year-old, he could not talk very well. His only sibling was his sister Maja, 2 years younger than Albert. At first, young Albert was puzzled by the new presence in the household. One of his first phrases was, "But where are the wheels?" Maybe he was autistic. Yeah. We just don't say that word anymore. Being the younger sister to Albert was no joy, since he had a nasty tendency to throw objects at her head. She would later lament, "A sound skull is needed to be the sister of a thinker." Contrary to myth, Einstein was a good student in school, but he was only good in the areas he cared about. Yeah, you know what? He might have had autism or maybe even ADHD. Sometimes I think that people who are very, they care about, I'm trying to reach my water. People who care about what they really care about and they don't do well at the things that they don't care about. I can relate a lot with that, actually. So this book kind of helped me to navigate some of my own challenges recently when I realized that I have autism and ADHD a little bit. I don't know, never been diagnosed, but it is. Do you believe in God? Yes. You know what I mean? I forgot about this part in the book, but Einstein was very focused. He only liked to be good at things that he actually cared about. And that can be more difficult, I think, for people with autism and ADHD, where, anyway, Einstein was good at school, but he only did good in the areas he cared about, such as mathematics and science. Hyperfocus, yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's why um, yeah, not your average cat. Thank you. Welcome to the live. Yeah, I definitely have hyperfocus. Um, and I definitely find it difficult to do things that I don't care about, which made it difficult for me in jobs, actually, because in jobs sometimes, you have to do things that you don't care about. But then I also hyper-focused on things I did care about. So there is that. I have autism and I like to focus on maths and science a lot. Oh, good. I like the crowd of people we're getting here on this live stream. So anyway, he cared about math and science, Einstein. The German school system encouraged students to give short answers based on rote memorization. Otherwise, they might be punished by painful slaps to the knuckles. Young Albert, however, spoke slowly, hesitantly, choosing his words carefully. He was far from being the perfect student. Chafing under a suffocating authoritative system that crushed creativity and imagination, replacing them with mind-numbing drills. When his father asked the headmaster what profession young Albert should pursue, he replied, "It doesn't matter, he'll never make a success of anything." Einstein's demeanor established itself early. He was dreamy, often lost in thought or reading. His classmates used to taunt him by calling him Biedermeier, which translates loosely as nerd. A friend would remember classmates regarded Albert as a freak because he showed no interest in sports. Teachers thought him dull-witted because of his failure to learn by rote and his strange behavior. At age 10, Albert entered the Luitpold Gymnasium in Munich, where his most excruciating ordeal was learning classical Greek. He would sit in his chair, smiling blankly to hide his boredom. At one point, his 7th grade Greek teacher, Herr Joseph Degenhardt, told Albert to his face that it would be better if he simply were not there. When Einstein protested that he did nothing wrong, the teacher replied, "Oh, Baji." Poor Einstein. This is making me think about my school days, actually. I'm kind of sad. I had some issues too in school like this, and we had punishment. We were beat. Yes, that is true. But you sit there in the back row and smile, and that violates the feeling of respect which a teacher needs from his class. Even decades later, Einstein would bitterly nurse the scars left by the authoritarian methods of the day. It is, in fact, nothing short of a miracle that the modern methods of instruction have not yet entirely strangled the holy curiosity of inquiry, for this delicate little plant, aside from stimulations, stands mainly in the need of freedom. I love this sentence. So a little plant, aside from stimulations, stands mainly in the need of freedom, which is what he thought the holy curiosity of inquiry was. I love your cat. Yes, he's Baji. Sounds like his daughters fed his motivation to be a free thinker. I mean, I think he was a free thinker because there's nothing he could do about it, Like, sometimes you just have no choice but to do your thing, even if there are haters, and I resonate with that. But I think he had a hard time in school. Like, poor guy. Einstein's interest in science started early, beginning with his encounter with magnetism, which he called his first miracle. He was given a compass by his father and was endlessly fascinated by the fact that invisible forces could make objects move. He fondly remembered, A wonder of such nature I experienced as a child of 4 or 5 years. When my father showed me a compass needle, I can still remember that this experience made a deep and lasting impression upon me. Something deeply hidden had to be behind things. When he was about 11, however, his life took an unexpected turn. He became devoutly religious. A distant relative would come by to tutor Albert in the Jewish faith, and he latched onto it in a surprisingly enthusiastic, almost fanatical way. He refused to eat pork and even composed several songs in praise of God, which he sang on his way to school. So, anyway, that gives you a little bit of an idea. I didn't want to read this whole chapter because it's mainly about Einstein's sort of background. It doesn't have. Actually, no, we will read this part. Let's see. Yeah, this is actually interesting. So this was when he was like 8 or 9. We know that he was struggling in school with the authoritarian methods. I wanted to read a little bit about when he was a bit older. So looks like because his father had financial problems, he had to be sent away to some distant relatives in Munich. Okay, so we'll read about this part. Einstein he did believe in God, actually. He worked on special relativity, which makes space-time, relative. So, yes, he formalized the relativity of space-time. So let me read this part, which is about when Einstein was around 15 years old. So all alone, Albert was miserable, trapped in a boarding school he hated, and facing military duty in the dreaded Prussian army. His teachers disliked him, and the feeling was mutual. He was apparently about to be expelled from school. On an impulse, Einstein decided to reunite with his family. He arranged for his family doctor to write a medical note excusing him from school, stating that he might suffer a breakdown unless he rejoined his family. He then made the solo journey to Italy, eventually winding up totally unexpected on his parents' doorstep. Herman and Pauline were perplexed about what to do with their son, a draft-dodging high school dropout with no skills, no profession, and no future. He would get into long arguments with his father, who wanted him to pursue a practical profession like electrical engineering. There you go. Double E in the chat. While Albert preferred to talk about being a philosopher. Eventually they compromised, and Albert declared that he would attend the famed Zurich Polytechnic Institute in Switzerland, even though he was 2 years younger than most students taking the entrance exam. One advantage was that the Polytechnic did not require a high school diploma, just a passing grade on its tough entrance examination. So, entrance examination, but don't need a high school diploma. I like that Einstein was being, resourceful, finding opportunities. Unfortunately, Einstein flunked the entrance exam. He failed the French, chemistry, and biology portions, but he did so exceptionally well in the math and physics sections that he impressed Albin Herzog, the principal, who promised to admit him the following year without Albert having to take the dreaded exam again. Ooh, yay! My physics boy. The head of the physics department, Henrik Weber, even offered to allow Einstein to audit his physics classes when he was in Zurich. Crazy Paul, thank you. Thank you for joining, Crazy Paul and Unknown. Thank you. So he had some hope with the Polytechnique now. Herzog recommended that Einstein spend the interim year attending a high school in Aarau, just 30 minutes west of Zurich. There, Albert became a lodger at the house of the high school's director, Jost Winteler, establishing a lifelong friendship between the Einstein family and the Wintelers. Yeah. Yes, yeah, he did not pass, but they liked his physics and math skills. So, and apparently, now he made friends in his gap year. He he established a lifelong friendship between with them and the Wintelers. In fact, Maja would later marry Winteler's son Paul, and Einstein's friend Michel Besso would marry the eldest daughter Anna. Um, Einstein enjoyed, so give me 1 second. Einstein enjoyed the relaxed, liberal atmosphere of the school. Here he was relatively free of the oppressive, authoritarian rules of the German system. He enjoyed the generosity of the Swiss, who cherished tolerance and independence of spirit. Einstein would fondly recall, I love the Swiss because, by and large, they're more humane than the other people among whom I have lived. Aww. Oh my gosh, remembering all the bad memories of his years in German schools, he also decided to renounce his German citizenship, a surprising step for a mere teenager. He would remain stateless for 5 years until he eventually became a Swiss citizen. Oh my gosh, I forgot that. I forgot about this part. My first astrophysics advisor in undergrad, so I did undergrad research in astrophysics as well. She was also from Switzerland. I completely forgot that the Swiss are so nice and apparently welcoming to physicists. That's so very nice, Switzerland. Thank you so much. If there's any Swiss people here, do you have boyfriend? The effects that you get in a black hole are weird. Spaghettification. Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yep. We can talk about black holes too. Yep. Black holes are a whole class of objects. Love them. So we can focus on black holes on one of the live streams for sure. But we'll talk more generally about special theory of relativity and GR here for this from this book. And we'll touch on black holes, I'm sure, as well. But this is so very nice. So he was in Switzerland, and the German schools did not suit him. Sorry. Oh, no worries. No worries. All of the discussion is welcome. Thank you so much, Unknown. You can type more things about black holes. No worries at all. Are black holes the only way for time travel? I'll let Unknown take that. The type of science that I'm into is astrology. Oh goodness, okay. Tell us more about astrology. I'll keep reading and then I'll read your comments, okay? So, Albert, flourishing in this freer atmosphere, began to shed his image as a shy, nervous, withdrawn loner to become outgoing and gregarious, someone who was easy to talk to and who made loyal friends. Maja, in particular, began to notice a new change in her older brother as he blossomed into a mature, independent thinker. Should we take a rest? Yes, we can. Yes, let's take a few minutes. I'll drink some water. I'll look at your comments. Thank you, Super Wang, for your understanding. I like reading about astrology too. This is Baji. Baji. Oh, thank you. This one's Baji. Fuji went upstairs. Super Wang. Thank you. You saw Fuji earlier. He has a lot of white, and he's very gorgeous. Touch wood. Maybe this will help my mind get back into being able to focus more. Yes, you should join our live streams. Not your average cat. We will talk about not your average things. We talk about, fun things like murder mystery books. I've read a bunch of, I've read some books like that too. But then right now we're doing this. I'm not currently in school. I'm done with, I'm still a student, I would say, lifelong of all these topics, but I'm currently not enrolled in school. I've finished my grad school already. I'm just so fascinated by space. It's so big and you don't even know what's out in space. For all we know, yes, aliens could be real. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Not your average. Reese, I had a cat called Cassiopeia. Yes, lifelong students, indeed. Let me have some of this water, Baji. Big squeeze. 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 Squeeze, squeeze. Pull, pull. High school, wow. Perfect. Yeah, I got a really nice deal on it from Home Goods. This was the floor piece on Home Goods. So, thank you, yeah. Unknown, you should share some of your astrology knowledge with us in the chat. And any other thoughts you have about space and aliens. So, by the way, on the topic of aliens too, there is sort of a focus in astronomy, speaking of astronomy, where they look for planets that are sort of Earth-like or have a potential to support life. And that's actually one way to try to find aliens. I found this to be very interesting. I can read a little bit, or we can discuss that too at some point in these live streams. So, isn't that something? My favorite movie is Contact. I need to rewatch it. I feel like if I've seen it, which I've heard about it, so I need to rewatch it. Can you remind me what happens? Oh, of course, yeah. Tell us anything you want. The chat welcomes you. I love sci-fi. Yeah. I think I just like sci. I don't know if I like the fi part too much, but I understand people love sci-fi. Oh, I love chemistry. I double majored in physics and chemistry. Love, love, love. Used to love chemistry. I mean, I still do. I did not finish my degree in chemistry though. It was going to take too long. There were some really long labs. I did at least 2 full years of chemistry, and I did 4 years of research in chemistry as like my, extra research work. But I did not finish the degree in chemistry, and they did not have a minor in chemistry because there were these very long labs that always conflicted with my physics classes, and I wanted to finish something in 4 years so that I could go to grad school and have them pay me, because the PhD in physics might pay you, and they did pay me. So to save money, I didn't finish my chemistry degree, or I would have had a chemistry degree too. Ooh, I see. I don't know. All right, so we'll keep going. So we're still talking about Einstein's time in Switzerland. Okay, so we'll skip to this part where now he has kind of grown up to be more mature, more independent thinker, and he's not as unhappy as he was in Germany. So Einstein is kind of coming into his own more, and he's around 16 years old now, okay, in Switzerland. So one girl in particular captured his attention. Only 16, Einstein fell passionately in love with one of Jost Winteler's daughters, Mary, who was 2 years older. In fact, all the key women in his life would be older than he, a tendency also shared by both his sons. Okay, that's just a detail. Michio Kaku, sometimes, whatever. Kind, sensitive, talented Mary wished to become a teacher like her father. Albert and Mary took long walks together, often bird watching, a favorite hobby of the Winteler family. He also accompanied her with his violin while she played the piano. Aw, Albert confessed to her his true love. Beloved sweetheart, I have now my angel. Had to learn the full meaning of nostalgia and longing, but love gives much more happiness than longing gives pain. I only now realize how indispensable my dear little sunshine has become to my happiness. Aww. So that was Albert writing about Mary. Mary returned Albert's affections and even wrote to Einstein's mother, who wrote back approvingly. The Wintelers and the Einsteins, in fact, half expected to see a wedding announcement from the two lovebirds. Mary, however, felt a bit inadequate when speaking about science with her sweetheart and thought this could be a problem in a relationship with such an intense, focused boyfriend. She realized that she would have to compete for Einstein's affections with his first true love, physics. Yeah, Einstein definitely had loves in his life. I don't know if these are just speculation or if this is real. So take it with a grain of salt. Uh, you know, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know, Michio Kaku, if I completely believe all this about Einstein's life, because yeah, whatever. Okay, we'll keep going. Also different from Newton. Newton didn't like women, which is fine. Okay. You know what? We'll skip this part. It's not as interesting. It's not. I don't know if he did they break up? I think Mary and him broke up, guys. Okay, so we'll just skip over that part because it's not that interesting. We can definitely talk about the life cycle of the sun. It's indeed very interesting. When we cover stars, we will definitely talk about that. The sun is very young. So yeah, as Unknown said, the sun is still a very young star. So anyway, let's talk about Polytechnique. Among the teachers at the Polytechnique was physics professor Henrik Weber, the same person who had been impressed with Einstein and offered to let him audit his classes after he failed the entrance exam. He had even promised. Can you hear me? Let's get started. Can you hear me? He had even promised Einstein a job as his assistant after graduation. Okay. Over time, however, Weber began to resent Einstein's impatience and disregard for authority. Eventually, the professor withdrew his support for Einstein, saying, "You're a smart boy, Einstein, a very smart boy, but you have one great fault. You do not let yourself be told anything." Oh my God. This is what my bosses tell me. I'm getting triggered. Physics instructor Jean Pernette also was not fond of Einstein. He was insulted when Einstein once threw the lab manual for one of Pernette's classes into the garbage without even looking at it. But Pernette's assistant defended Einstein, stating that although unorthodox, Einstein's solutions were always right. Pernette nevertheless confronted Einstein. You're enthusiastic, but hopeless at physics. For your own good, you should switch to something else, medicine maybe, literature or law. Once, because Einstein had torn up the lab instructions, he accidentally caused an explosion that severely injured his right hand, requiring stitches to close the wound. We're talking about this book, Einstein's Cosmos. His relations with Pernette had degenerated so badly that Pernette gave Einstein a 1, the lowest possible grade in his course. Mathematics professor Hermann Minkowski even called Einstein a lazy dog. That's the book. Minkowski. We know that name. In contrast to his professor's disdain, the friends Einstein made in Zurich would stand loyally by him for the rest of his life. There were only 5 students in his physics class that year he got to know them all. One was Marcel Grossman, a student of mathematics who took careful, meticulous notes of all the lectures. His notes were so good, in fact, that Einstein frequently borrowed them rather than go to class, often getting better scores on the exams than Grossman himself. Even today, Grossman's notes are preserved at the university. Grossman confided to Einstein's mother that something very great would someday happen to Einstein. But one person who caught Einstein's attention was another student in his class, Mileva Maric, a woman from Serbia. It was rare to find a physics student from the Balkans, even rarer to find a woman. Mileva was a formidable person who decided by herself to go to Switzerland because it was the only German-speaking country admitting women to the university. She was only the fifth woman to be accepted to study physics at the Polytechnique. Yeah, his professors. They were jealous, yeah. So Mileva was the only woman. Well, guess what? Not much has changed. I was the only woman in my physics classes. Or one of like two women. She was only the fifth woman to be accepted to study physics at the Polytechnique. Einstein had met his match, a woman who could speak the language of his first love. He found her irresistible and quickly broke off his relationship with Mary Winteler. Look at that. Okay. So I skipped a part. He was with Mary, but now he's with Mileva because he found her irresistible and they spoke this language of physics. He daydreamed that he and Mileva would become professors of physics and make great discoveries together. Soon they were helplessly in love. When they were separated during vacations, they would exchange long, torrid love letters, calling each other by a host of fond nicknames such as Johnny and Dolly. Einstein would write her poems as well as exhortations of his love. I can go anywhere I want, but I belong nowhere, and I miss your two little arms and the glowing mouth full of tenderness and kisses. Oh my gosh. Einstein and Mileva exchanged over 430 letters preserved by one of their sons. Yeah. Ironically, although they lived in near poverty, just one step ahead of the bill collectors, some of these letters recently fetched $400,000 at an auction. So these love letters were auctioned off for $400,000. Einstein's friends could not understand what he saw in Mileva. While Einstein was outgoing with a quick sense of humor, Mileva, 4 years older, was much darker. She was moody, intensely private, and distrustful of others. Okay, so she was like Newton. Side note. She also walked with a noticeable limp due to a congenital problem. One leg was shorter than the other, which further isolated her from others. Friends whispered behind her back about the peculiar behavior of her sister Zorka, who acted strangely and would later become institutionalized as a schizophrenic. But most important, her social status was questionable. Whereas the Swiss might sometimes look down on Jews, Jews in turn sometimes looked down on Southern Europeans, especially from the Balkans. Whatever, man. Mileva, in turn, had no illusions about Einstein. His brilliance was legendary, as well as his irreverent attitude toward authority. She knew that he had renounced his German citizenship and held unpopular views concerning war and peace. She would write, "My sweetheart has a very wicked tongue and is a Jew into the bargain." Aw. Einstein's growing involvement with Mileva, however, was opening up a seismic chasm with his parents. His mother, who had looked approvingly on his relationship with Mary, thoroughly disliked Mileva, regarding her as beneath Albert and someone who would bring ruin to him and their reputation. She was simply too old, too sick, too unfeminine, too gloomy, and too Serbian. Oh my God. I don't know if that's Michio Kaku or the mom, but that's a very harsh sentence. "This Miss Merrick is causing me the bitterest hours of my life," she confided to a friend. "If it were in my power, I would make every possible effort to banish her from our horizon. I really dislike her, but I have lost all influence with Albert." She would warn him, "By the time you're 30, she'll be an old witch." Oh my God. That's not very nice at all. Too Serbian? Really? Oh my God. is not very nice at all. But Einstein was determined to see Mileva, even if it meant causing a deep rupture in his close knit family. Once, when Einstein's mother was visiting her son, she asked, "What's to become of her?" When Einstein replied, "My wife," she suddenly threw herself on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. His mother accused him of destroying his future for a woman who cannot gain entrance to a good family. Eventually, facing the fierce opposition from his parents, Einstein would have to shelve any thoughts of marriage to Mileva until he finished school and got a well paying job. In 1900, when Einstein finally graduated from the Polytechnique with a degree in physics and mathematics, his luck soured. It was assumed that he would be given an assistantship, so like a job. Yeah, she was only a little bit older. Yeah, no, these people were so harsh. Uh, I, she was 4 years older. Yeah. Yep. Was much darker. Does that mean like skin color? I don't know. Doesn't seem nice. It was assumed that he would be. It was assumed that he would be given an assistantship. So that's actually very common in academia. Like I was saying, if you're going to be pursuing a pure science field, like I got an assistantship. Like I had a teaching assistantship in my first few years of graduate school, and then I had a research assistantship. That's how people get their PhDs in the pure sciences. Generally, you're paid a stipend and your tuition and fees are waived, and you're given like a position, and it's generally called an assistantship. So basically, Einstein was hoping that he would get an assistantship in the Polytechnique while he pursued, further research. But looks like he was having trouble with that. So this was the norm, especially since he had passed all his exams and had done well in school. But because Professor Weber had withdrawn his job offer, Einstein was the only one in his class denied an assistantship, a deliberate slap in the face. Once so cocky, he suddenly found himself in uncertain circumstances, especially as financial support from a well to do aunt in Genoa dried up with his graduation. Unaware of the depth of Weber's intense antipathy, Einstein foolishly gave Weber's name as a reference, not realizing that this would further sabotage his future. Oh, Baji. Reluctantly, he began to realize that his error probably doomed his career even before it started. He would lament bitterly, "I would have found a job long ago if Weber had not played a dishonest game with me. All the same, I leave no stone unturned and do not give up my sense of humor. God created the donkey and gave him a thick hide." Meanwhile, Einstein also applied for Swiss citizenship, but this was impossible until he could prove that he was employed. His world was collapsing swiftly. The thought of having to play the violin on the street like a beggar crossed his mind. His father. Oh, look at Baji. Hi. Hi, Baji. Hi. His father, realizing his son's desperate plight, wrote a letter to Professor Wilhelm Ostwald of Leipzig, pleading with him to give his son an assistantship. Ostwald never even responded to this letter. Ironically, a decade later, Ostwald would be the first person to nominate Einstein for the Nobel Prize in Physics. Einstein would note how unfair the world suddenly became. By the mere existence of his stomach, everyone was condemned to participate in that chase. He wrote sadly, "I'm nothing but a burden to my relatives. It would surely be better if I did not live at all." Oh. Oh, wow. We'll wrap up this chapter in just a bit. Then you can sleep. To make matters worse, just at this time, his father's business once again went bankrupt. Goodness. In fact, his father spent all of his wife's inheritance, so Einstein's mother's inheritance, and was deeply in debt to her family. Lacking any financial support, Einstein had no choice but to find the most menial teaching position available. Desperate, he began to comb the newspapers for any hint of a job. At one point, he almost gave up hope of ever becoming a physicist and seriously considered working for an insurance company. There we go. We've all been there. Had to work for an insurance company. In 1901, he found a job teaching mathematics at the Winterthur Technical School. Somehow, between exhausting teaching duties, he was able to squeeze enough time to write his first published paper, Deductions from the Phenomena of Capillarity. Oh, my baby. He wrote his first paper, I'm so proud of him, which Einstein himself realized was not earth-shaking. Aw, well, you gotta start somewhere. You know, if your first paper is not earth-shaking, don't stop. The next year, I still remember my first paper. Aw, it's a big one. The next year, he took a temporary tutoring position at a boarding school in Schaffhausen. True to form, he could not get along with the authoritarian director of the school, Jacob Nusch, and was summarily fired. The director was so inflamed that he even accused Einstein of fomenting a revolution. Einstein was beginning to think that he would spend the rest of his life forced to eke out a menial existence, tutoring indifferent students and scouring the ads in newspapers. Actually, that was his teacher who said that he would amount to nothing, not his father. I think his father was okay with him. His friend Frederick Adler would recall that at this time, Albert was close to starvation. He was a complete failure. Still, he refused to ask his relatives for a handout. Then he faced two more setbacks. First, Mileva flunked her final exams at the Polytechnique for the second time. This meant that her career as a physicist was essentially finished. No one would ever accept her into a graduate program with her dismal record. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is very painful actually. You know, when we are like applying to grad school programs, that can actually be quite unnerving. I have a whole book on this that I myself wrote, actually. So this is actually quite unnerving when you cannot get into grad school or an assistantship like we're seeing with Einstein and his girlfriend. Their romantic dreams of exploring the universe together were over, and then in November 1901, when Mileva was back home, he received a letter from her telling him that she was pregnant. So she was pregnant. Oh, sorry. Maybe I misspoke. But I think it was his teacher that thought he would go to nothing. Einstein, despite his lack of prospects, was still thrilled at the possibility of becoming a father. Being separated from Mileva was torture, but they furiously exchanged letters almost daily. On February 4th, 1902, he finally learned he was a father of a baby girl born at Mileva's parents' home in Novi Sad and christened Lyserl. Excited, Einstein wanted to know everything about her. He even pleaded with Mileva to please send a photo or a sketch of her. Mysteriously, no one is sure, What happened to the child? The last mention of her is in a letter from September 1903, which stated that she was suffering from scarlet fever. Oh no. Historians believe that she most likely died of the disease or that she was eventually given up for adoption. Oh no. I forgot about this. Just when his fortunes appeared as if they could not sink any lower, Einstein received word from an unexpected source. His good friend Marcel Grossman had been able to secure a job for him as a minor civil servant at the Bern Patent Office. From that lowly position, Einstein would change the world. Okay, so his friend from school. So this is why people say, networking is a good thing. Your friends will more likely help you to get a job than random people. And sometimes even degrees and things cannot help you. You have to take the help of your friend. So remember his friend from college, Marcel Grossman, who was good in the math notes taking. He basically got Einstein a job at the patent office. To keep alive his fading hopes of one day becoming a professor, he persuaded Professor Alfred Kleiner of the University of Zurich to be his PhD advisor during this period. So he was working, at the patent office and also wanted to pursue a PhD. Got it. Yeah. Yep. On June 23, 1902, Einstein began work at the patent office as a technical expert, third class, with a paltry salary. In hindsight, there were at least 3 hidden advantages to working at this office. First, his job forced him to find his basic physical principles that underlay any invention. During the day, he honed his considerable physical instincts by stripping away unnecessary details and isolating the essential ingredient of each patent and then writing up a report. His reports were so long on detail and analysis that he wrote to his friends that he was making a living pissing ink. Oh gosh. Oh my god. Oh my god. His reports were detailed and long and oh my god. That's how I am too. I write too much and nobody wants to read it. Yay. Second, many of the patent applications concerned electromechanical devices, so his ample experience visualizing the inner workings of dynamos and electric motors from his father's factory was a great help. And last, it freed him from distractions and gave him time to ponder deep questions about light and motion. Often, he could finish the details of his work quickly, leaving hours to fall back on the daydreams that dogged him since his youth. Pissing ink. Yeah. In his work, and especially at night, he returned to his physics. The quiet atmosphere of the patent office suited him. He called it his worldly monastery. So this worked out. He was able to review all these inventions and also keep up with his physics and math interests. And because the patent office was kind of a boring job, it gave him time to think about physics and the things he wanted to think about. Worldly monastery. Einstein had barely settled into his new job at the patent office when he learned that his father was dying of heart disease. In October, he had to depart immediately for Milan. On his deathbed, Hermann finally gave Albert his blessing to marry Mileva. The death left Albert with an overpowering sense that he had disappointed his father. And family, a feeling that would stay with him forever. Oh gosh, so his father died not knowing about his accomplishments. Yeah, in his father's job, he studied dynamos and generators. We skipped a little bit of that part, so that's why the death left Albert. Oh yeah, do you know how earthquakes work? I'm not um I'm not an earthquake expert at all. Sounds to me like a geophysics question, perhaps. Yeah, we'll finish up. We'll read a couple more paragraphs and then we'll do more next time. Voice is a bit rough after. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Reese. So many years later, the death left, sorry, let's read this sentence. The death left Albert with an overpowering sense that he had disappointed his father and family, a feeling that would stay with him forever. His secretary, Helen Dukas, wrote, many years later, he still recalled vividly his shattering sense of loss. Indeed, on one occasion, he wrote that his father's death was the deepest shock he had ever experienced. Maja, in particular, bitterly noted that sad fate did not permit her father even to suspect that 2 years later his son would lay the foundation of his future greatness and fame. That's the thing. You could be working in the patent office, being a nobody 1 year, and then 2 years later you could be something completely different, you know? And that's what Einstein did, but his father would never know that because he died. In January of 1903, Einstein finally felt secure enough to marry Mileva. A year later, their son Hans was born. Einstein settled down to the life of a lowly Einstein settled down to the life of a lowly civil servant in Bern, a husband and a father. His friend David Reichenstein vividly remembered visiting Einstein during this period. The door of the flat was open to allow the floor, which had just been scrubbed, and the washing hung up in the hall to dry. I entered Einstein's room. With one hand, he was stoically rocking a bassinet in which there was a child. In his mouth, Einstein had a very bad cigar, and in the other hand, an open book. The stove was smoking horribly. To raise some extra money, he put an ad in the local newspaper offering private lessons in mathematics and physics. It was the first recorded mention of Einstein's name in any newspaper. Oh my gosh. That's too funny. Maurice Sullivan, a Jewish Romanian student of philosophy, was the first student to answer the ad. To his delight, Einstein found that Sullivan was an excellent sounding board for his many ideas about space-time and light. To prevent himself from becoming dangerously isolated from the main currents in physics, he hit upon the idea of forming an informal study group, which Einstein mockingly called the Olympian Academy, to debate the great issues of the day. Wow. Yeah. In hindsight, the days spent with the Academy group were perhaps the most joyous. In Einstein's life, decades later, tears would come to his eyes when he recalled the vibrant, audacious claims they made as they voraciously devoured all the major scientific works of the day. Their spirited debates and raucous discussions filled the coffee houses and beer halls of Zurich, and anything seemed possible. They would fondly swear, these words of Epicurus applied to us. What a beautiful thing joyous poverty is. Wow, what a beautiful thing joyous poverty is. That's how I feel at this time. Well, I'm gonna fold this page because we'll pick up here next time. 31. Page 31. We will pick up as I do need to go to bed today, but we'll pick this up again tomorrow. Hopefully we can go live a bit earlier tomorrow and we can make some more progress. Oh, thank you for sharing, Unknown. Thank you for sharing all the interesting facts today. Very nice of you. Can relate to the poverty. Not sure about the joyous part. Well, this live has been joyous. It's like us. We're all getting together to read this topic and discuss physics and other interesting topics, and we're joyfully discussing. And this is nice. Thank you so much for being on the live. That's deja vu. Oh, yeah. There we go. But I forgot, because I read this book as a child, like when I was a teenager, early teens maybe, I forgot that there was so much that I would resonate with later on. Because, you know, when you're a child, you don't really know what it's like to have a job and things like that and have a boss or like an authoritarian. I remember dealing with authoritarian school system growing up, but there's also things with like getting jobs, getting assistantships. There's so much to relate here. Mm. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Let's go live again tomorrow, and we can pick up where we left off with this chapter and with this topic. This particular chapter we're almost done with. It is about Einstein's early life, but soon we will get into a bit more about the meat of the topic that we want to discuss, which is the special relativity topic and his work. Thank you for the read. That's very cost vocal voice. A lot of people thought Mandela died in jail, hence the name Mandela effect. Thank you for reading. Isaac Newton invented cat flap. Really? No, seriously, Heike? I didn't know that. Mandela effect is because he died in jail. You feel like you've been there. So that's deja vu. I appreciate your reading and chatting. Thank you. Thank you, Rizem. Thank you so much. I hope I see you tomorrow and also Saturday, Sunday. So hopefully Sat and Sun, we can get together at a more reasonable time. So I usually go live like it's my afternoon time, and it should be sort of like maybe evening time in Europe. So catch you then. Mandela effect. I had no idea that people think that Mandela died in jail. Okay. I learned a lot, guys. Thank you so much for sharing. I look forward to it. I'm lucky to have happened to cross your channel. Yay, same. Lucky that we crossed paths. So, yeah. I'll share my facts whenever you want. Yes, unknown. Next time we join, you know what you should do, unknown? This is your homework problem. Tell us a little bit more about earthquakes next time, okay? So I don't know about earthquakes much, to be totally honest with you. Geophysics is not really my topic, but you could go read a little bit more about it and tell us next time so that we can learn about it ourselves here on this live. Cross finger. Will do. Yay! Earthquakes, I'll write that down. Yes, please. Because, and you know what would be interesting to unknown is, I mean, I know the Himalayas were, the mountains, were made with, like with the tectonic plates bumping into each, like and that's why they still grow, right? They're getting taller and taller, whereas there's other mountains like the Rockies that are actually getting degraded and they're not getting taller, they're getting shorter. Something about that too, if you could relate the earthquakes with maybe how mountains are made. I think that's very interesting, but I myself don't know much about it. But tell us next time. I learned the earthquakes and then I forgot why I learned, so I would Yes, let's talk about these interesting things. Like, oh, you know who might know about earthquakes is Heike. Heike, didn't you tell me about... he might have told me about volcanoes. He told me about volcanoes. But he might know about earthquakes too. That's okay. Next time, we pick up from this part of the book and we chat and we also learn about earthquakes from unknown. Tidal waves of magma moving the tectonic plates. What drives the flow? I don't know, maybe the moon? Right.